One of my greatest joys in life is facilitating those connections and putting the right people in contact with the right people and just stepping back and just letting the magic happen.
Yeah. Marilyn Gaughan-Reddan, CEO of Galway Culture Company, thank you for coming on to Garry Talks.
My team had been made redundant. That's a very difficult thing because, you know, it didn't just affect them, it affected their families and their lives and so on. And then, you know, it's, look, we need to continue, we have to continue. We need to do this for Galway.
But we being who? You?
I'm getting emotional now even thinking about it.
This is a GK Media podcast. Marilyn Gaughan-Reddan, CEO of Galway Culture Company, thank you for coming on to Garry Talks.
Well, thanks for having me, Garry.
We go back many, many years. Mm-hmm. I met you on the scene when I was working in radio. You were at the Arts Office for Galway County Council at the time, but I remember in particular Grania, who worked in the newsroom, when I was starting out on my own, setting up GK Media 11 years ago, she was saying, you know, you need to speak to Marilyn in Galway County Council. Just ring her up, just tell her what you're at, process in your head, because I was trying to start a business, didn't know exactly what I was at, trying to reach out to people who could be a support morally or whatever. Bounce my ideas off people. And I remember I was on the phone to you for, must have been like 40 minutes or something, pacing the bedroom upstairs and explaining to you what I was trying to do in setting up this business. And just the confidence boost I was getting from you on the phone was just so important and valuable for me at that time. So thank you, because you are one of the reasons of those people I reached out to in the initial stage that gave me the confidence to be where we all are today in the business.
Oh, stop. I mean, I think anybody who goes into this business or into the business of culture or creativity is very brave. I do remember that actually. I remember talking to you about it, and I remember you coming into the office and just having this really honest conversation about, it'll be difficult. It's not easy. And what the challenges might be. And there's very little funding at the time as well for...
Yeah, there was zero funding.
For organisations, for companies, particularly in film, starting out. Yeah. And public funding in Ireland is defined into little boxes and everything needs to stay in its own box. Yeah. And I often find that organisations and companies and individuals who do a bit of both actually end up being neither from a funding perspective, even though you're doing everything. Yeah,
because starting off, you know, the business that I was, you know, if you go to a local enterprise office, they want to see how you can, you know, sell abroad ultimately, you know, for manufacturing and stuff. They love that. Yeah. But someone starting off a digital video company or marketing agency, it's completely different.
Oh, well, you were ahead of your time.
Yeah, well, a lot was changing because, you know, for people, Facebook was really just beginning to become a thing, which is mad. It was only 11 years ago, but social media was just beginning to kick off.
And you were one of the first companies in Galway to actually do it, to come out and say, we are GK Media and use media, actually. Nobody else was doing that at the time. And I think that's what I found so refreshing. And that's why I thought, wow, this guy's going to do it. He's actually going to do it. And you did.
I don't have a choice. I want to go back because I know you're a big movie buff, and something I was really jealous of at the time, and I think was when you were working in Galway County Council, is there would be companies coming over to Ireland checking out locations about, you know, making a movie here, and you were part of that process. That must have been really exciting.
That's one word for it. Yeah. Well, I suppose in 2001, 2002, what was happening was we were getting a lot of phone calls from organisations, companies, individuals looking to shoot in Galway County and struggling in terms of permissions and access and so on. And we were working very closely with the then Galway Film Resource Centre. So we set up a very simple locations service, working with the area engineers at the time, but also working with local farmers. So got in the car, drove out to different parts of the county, met people, asked people. And we did that with film producers, which was really, really interesting. And what I loved was local people who knew nothing about film going, we want to help. Sure, what can we do? Yeah. And that turned into kind of location services, which turned into assistance, which it sort of evolved over a 6-year period. And we ended up doing a lot of work with the Galway Film Resource Centre. And really, it was a very, I suppose, when I started as an arts officer, it was 2001. Great support and help from James C. Harold. driving around the county, putting structures on things, because back then it was very ad hoc, very community based, and just trying to look at, well, how can we professionalise this? What can we do together? And at
the time, just say, like, Braveheart had been shot in Ireland,
yes.
Saving Private Ryan. So out of nowhere, we suddenly realised that there was a hunger for the big companies and American stuff to film here in Ireland.
And we were one of the first local authorities in the country to do this, actually. And then we provided support and assistance to other local authorities who were setting up screen offices, or screen commissions as they were called back then. So we kind of ended up with a lovely network of people who were like-minded, who wanted to have supports for film development in their counties. And it was really important for us to be at the heart of it and to support it along with others, including who was then the Irish Film Board, now Screen Ireland. And we had a lovely way of working. It was very easy. It was very collaborative. And the economic impact in local communities was enormous because B&Bs, caterers, electricians, first aiders, hardware companies for building sets, everybody benefited.
Yeah, huge knock-on effect.
And it was a very exciting time. And of course, we stand on the shoulders of giants because Uachtar Rasta Gaeltachta had put in place a whole training programme. Teach Cahir was really taking off. There was a whole ecosystem emerging in what is now affectionately referred to by researchers as the Indravaughan cluster. All these fancy names for things. We were just getting on with it because there was work that needed to be done and we were responding to that. So it was a very exciting time, actually. And those kind of 12, 14 years were very exciting leading up to Galway's designation as a UNESCO city film.
Like I had just come out of college in 2001 and there was a great buzz and belief.
There was.
Because before, for those previously studying, you know, the next step is you're going to London or you're going to try to break it in New York or LA or whatever. But it's great to feel that on your own doorstep, things are beginning to happen.
They were, and we were working with the Galway Film Resource Centre on the ID Films project
That's
as well.
right, yeah.
So communities were making films about their own community identity, and it was giving a lot of work to young filmmakers, emerging filmmakers, established filmmakers to work with communities. And then some communities ended up buying equipment and working with the Film Resource Centre on that at the time as well. And it just sort of, there was a lovely explosion around the sector before 2008.
Yeah, I know. Like I did one of the ID films with the Clan Resource Centre out in Uachtar. And just like it was a godsend for me just to actually have an income for a few months. But it was also a purpose. It was a project to work on. And I was working with young people and elderly people on the project. So that was an interesting process as well.
And it gave voice to communities that had no voices.
Yeah.
And it did it through the media of film.
And it was their voice through themselves. So in other words, they were the ones trained up in using the equipment and then they would video themselves as opposed to some hot director coming in doing their own take on it, you know. You know,
we made 96 of those films.
Oh, wow.
96 in total over the year. And it was just a beautiful program because the amazing filmmakers who were discovered and kind of emerged through that whole process as well was just amazing because people like yourselves, it was just a lovely project, actually. It was a really lovely project.
Yeah.
And just the voice to communities. You know, we met people from all different types of backgrounds, all corners of the city and the county, incredible communities and individuals and people of all abilities and ages. And it was a really inclusive way of working because you had professional filmmakers working alongside communities, facilitated by the Galway Film Resource Centre and supported by the 2 arts offices. And James always did the introduction for the big opening night in the town hall, which was always a jam-packed night, you know, wedged. So it was great. It was one of my favourite projects, actually.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah. Unfortunately, everything really kind of comes to an end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a great initiative. When did you finish up then as arts officer in Galway County Council?
I took a career break in 2010. I was working for myself for a while. Then the crash came. And I went back, and between maternity leaves, I had 3 girls and so on. I then left in, I think, 2016, 2017 to work on the bid for the Capital of Culture. So yeah, I was an arts officer for about 16 years, I suppose, 17 years in total.
Personally, did you find that very liberating or restrictive? You know, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with budgets and there's more people who need the support than can actually access it.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm saying that is I know there's a lot of changes that you have implemented through Galway Culture Company. I'm wondering, is some of that from maybe working within certain parameters as an arts officer in the county council?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think as well, we were pushing boundaries and we were trying new things and new ways of working in the county arts office. And I always seemed to be in trouble, which was a great position to be in. They go, oh God, she's coming. What now? Because I was young. I had so many ideas. I wanted to do everything. And the county was bursting with talent. And the burden of trying to support everybody was huge. I mean, even when we opened Áras, the Arts Centre on Inisheer, I mean, it was just, we're doing what now? We're opening an arts centre on an island with a population of what? How many people? Less than 200? Like, you know, that was back in 2001. So it was, you know, very exciting things, very exciting times. But like any agency or large organisation, it does come with its challenges as well. And I suppose one of the things we've done in the Galway Culture Company is through our open calls to really simplify the process to make sure that artists are very supported in applying for funding and applying for the bursaries. We've no application forms. It's by submission only. So, and it's through, I suppose it's an evolution or an evolution as well of practice that you meet people who have, you know, from lots of different backgrounds and who struggle with making applications enormously. And I spent a lot of time listening to people and getting feedback. And you'll notice one line in all of our calls is that we try to ensure that artists from a marginalised background come through the applications. And it's really, really important to us because there are lots of voices out there. And one of the challenges and one of the joys has been the sheer volume. Over the last year, it's been amazing to discover that actually there's a lot of voices in Galway who've, you know, a lot of artists who've never applied for funding because they just don't know how. They're frightened of it, fearful of it, the amount of paperwork. And working with Megs Morley and the Galway Arts Centre and Johnny and Macnas and Darach and Phoebeen and Pierce Doherty and others, just to really simplify it and streamline it and make it easy. And to demystify it as well and get back to people and say, look, you know, how can we be helpful? What do you need? Yeah. And just to be as responsive to that as possible.
So, I mean, it's extremely intimidating for an artist, and not all artists are academic as well. When you come to the application process for funding, which is, you know, largely, you know, if one works as a freelancer independent, they rely on.
Completely.
And this is the way they output what's going on internally as well. Do you know, it's more than just a career. And as we were saying, like, I was delighted to see certain names who I know personally that were on the list, that they had gotten support from Galway Culture Company because they've been at this for years. And I know even more people who have left the arts because it wasn't a sustainable living for them, you know, but that there's people on this list who have family as well. It's not just them that's getting supported, but it has a knock-on effect where they can support their family as well. And you and I, having children ourselves, we know like how important it is to be able to put your head on the pillow at night knowing that you're able to look after your children. But
also to know that you're valued and respected. You know, that's been a lot of the feedback we've got as well, is that, you know, through the process of just being listened to and supported, that it's about value and respect and also about the financial impact for your family. So it's all of those things. And I think a lot of artists coming out of COVID as well, which was a very, very, very tough time for our sector in particular, you know, have struggled, you know, really struggled. Like this morning we had the first meeting of the AV Forum. It's the first time ever that, you know, everyone working in the sector was in the same room since well before COVID, long before COVID.
I just want to jump back to the European Capital of Culture, talk briefly on it, because it might have a love-hate relationship for you. But I still think it's important to discuss, because I remember we were based in Galway City Centre at the time, our office, and just we heard this sudden rupture from outside on the streets. And I was like, what's happening? What did I miss? Because we were literally in our own little bubble, our own cocoon. And of course, it had just been announced that Galway was going to be the European Capital of Culture 2020. And again, it was like the World Cup in 1990 in Italy. The streets were just buzzing, huge excitement, everyone 100% on board, really, really excited. And then things started to change, I guess, as we got closer. And leading up to it, again, there was constant interrogation and criticism, and it was a constant battle PR wise to just say, look, everyone is trying their best and there's an artistic director gone here and we don't know, well, some people didn't know why or whatever, but there was all this kind of trying to run an event and juggle with all that.
There were challenges and a crisis on a daily basis, and really hard to, it was very difficult. It was very difficult. And there was a different challenge literally every day. Something else would happen and something else would happen and something else. And
was it like down to communication? Was it down to funding? Was it just things being brought in that weren't being thought out?
Bit of everything, I think, really, and I think it's, at the end of the day, when COVID came after all those years, I just was like, this actually can't be happening. Yeah. I just remember leaving the office. We were all packing our boxes and just feeling the sense of this actually cannot be happening. That for me was one of the most probably challenging times in my life in every way, because I suppose the team, my team had been made redundant. So that's a very difficult thing, because, it didn't just affect them, it affected their families and their lives and so on. So I suppose it was very difficult, because at that stage I was asked to deliver the programme, which was not my role prior to that. So it was very daunting, very frightening time professionally. What do you do in the great unknown?
And just to get the timeline, like this project was like 7 years in the making or so, was it?
At that stage, the first bid was 2015, designation was 2016, and COVID came in 2020.
So 5 years in, and there's a team, and one day you look around the office and everyone is gone.
That day in March, it was just horrendous, because we had come on the back of Carry Cola, which was the largest land light installation ever created by man in Connemara in Knocknafui, and that was shut down. That was a really, really tough day. And going into the office and just leaving with our boxes and not knowing. And then within a couple of weeks, it became evident that this was really serious and that nobody was leaving their bedrooms anytime soon. And then to everybody kind of been put on hold until we knew what was happening. And in the meantime, there are cultural organisations, artists and the team trying to understand what was happening and all the rest of it. So that was it was very uncertain, no more than it was for anybody else in every sector. I mean, it was across the board, across the world. And then, it's, look, we need to continue. We have to continue. We need to do this for Galway.
But being who? You?
Well, at that stage, it was the team were made redundant. That was really, really, really tough, because people had put years of their lives into this and had families. So it was myself and Kate was part-time on programme, and that was it. So it was enormously challenging. But, we got through it, and very good work came out of it. Some very good people, some really well-intentioned people, and a lot of artists who created some really, really amazing work. And I think that some of that got lost in the whole thing as well. Yeah. And that I find that disappointing for those people in particular who put their heart and souls into creating work for such a long period of time. And
what could be done differently on hindsight, you think?
I think fundamentally the thing for me that I think is a flaw in the whole thing is you put in a bid, you work on the bid, you develop the bid, and then as soon as the bid is won, the whole thing changes. You bring in creative directors who are not involved in the bidding process. You bring in delivery teams who weren't involved in the bidding process. And I think that for me is a piece that I just don't understand. I think, why wouldn't you have a continuum of what started and what was committed to? Which is why the bid book and delivering the bid book was really, really important, and the focus on those companies and organisations was really important to many of us. There's only 2 or 3 of us who lasted the entire process.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge in itself as well, And
I remember speaking to you after Galway 2020, when it was even coming to the close of the legacy element, which is kind of just documenting everything that had happened and making sure things phase out properly for people who are involved in various projects. And I think you were at a crossroads then. You didn't know what direction to go in.
Personally, I didn't. It was kind of, after everything, it was so hard. It was a really tough time. And, you carry the burden of it as well, So yeah, I wasn't. I still have those days, Garry. What will I do next week? Where will I be next month? I did. I mean, it's a human reaction to it as well, It was the most challenging thing I've ever done. And yeah, really, really difficult. But look, I'm the kind of person, if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And I'll stay with it to the bitter end, no matter what. And I'm proud to say that I did, actually. And that I did do what I said I would do. And it was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And I hadn't been responsible for the programme in that way before. My job as head of programme before that was very much to oversee certain elements, but not be fully responsible. So it turned into a very different role. I didn't change my title or anything like that. It just, it wasn't right in any way, shape or form. It was really just to sit down and go, wow, this is actually happening. I remember being very daunted by the whole thing. And then, having a couple of conversations with others and people going, you can do this. You can absolutely do this. And just remember just blankness, because it hadn't been done before, and to try and find a way to make it all work and to support the projects and those within the projects, knowing at the same time that our team had been made redundant. So that was really, really difficult. Really difficult.
But it must have been strange though as well, where, you're in one part of an office and all the decisions are being made, we'll say in the other room, creatively of what's happening.
We had creative directors and so on. So
and then the creative directors are gone.
Yeah.
And then Marilyn is given the programme to fill.
Well, to deliver at that stage in COVID. So that was challenging. It was really, really challenging. And, thanks to the partnership of many people and the goodwill of many people and good collaborations and trust, that a lot of very good work was delivered during COVID, albeit online and where possible in person. And just constantly working with the department and other agencies and getting permissions and licenses and permissive access agreements and trying to figure out all the moving parts. And then everything changed every day. Every day there was something else. And just trying to be on the end of the phone for people who also carried that responsibility for all their own organisations in trying to deliver projects as well. Because we were not alone in that. We were at that stage, I'm not a creative director. That's not my job. That's not my skill. But I was working with many creative directors within their organisations who are and who were at the time and who needed to make the projects work for them and for their teams and their organisations. So it was the management of all of the moving parts. And it was really trying to look at that and put a structure on it, and then put a comms structure on it to communicate to the public who could engage with the work online or in person where possible. And just having many, many conversations late into the night in most cases.
During the most stressful of times as well for the world.
For the world, yeah. And, it was one of the few projects globally that continued in culture. And it did so, quite well. A lot of organisations really stepped up and delivered beautiful projects and programmes online. And pushed their own boundaries as well. Everybody did, to deliver and to do it well and to do it right. And also in the process, learning new skills, new ways of working, new collaborations. Part of my job was trying to put people together who could work together to create work for online, and then acknowledging what couldn't go online, because not all work works online. To try and make that work with the timetable that worked within the department guidelines, our own partners' guidelines and timetables, and to just try and make that work as a program was really, really difficult. And then to adhere to all the risk assessments, the COVID assessments, and all of the COVID compliance was hugely challenging. Excel became my new best friend. And I had spreadsheets on spreadsheets on spreadsheets on spreadsheets. So yeah, as a result, I have glasses. I kind of lost my mind, because some nights I'd be working until quite late into the night, because also we had to educate the kids at home, God love them, and do what we all needed to do during COVID to get through COVID. So to do all of that, and as a result, I would work quite late. I had to anyway, because we just had long hours that needed to be done, and it was about getting the job done, and that was it. And just because something is hard doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. And it was important because it then had that knock-on effect for those organisations in terms of sustaining.
There were so many relying on this.
There were so many people relying on it, and so many jobs within the cultural partners relying on it. And there was an enormous burden on us in relation to that too. So that needed to happen for the sector to maintain it here in Galway. And, a lot of organisations responded as well as they possibly could. And Brand Galway stood well as a result of that, because it's really interesting. When people talk about Plan B on delivery in a European context, they talk about Galway. There are lots of other things I'm sure they can say, but that they can say was done very well.
Yeah.
And the other thing it did was people tuned in from all over the world to look at Galway-based organisations that had never even heard of them, and viewed concerts online and productions online, and got to know Galway-based organisations who maybe, if the thing had happened in person, wouldn't have been in a position to come here in the first place. So a lot of collaborations actually happened for Galway-based artists and organisations as a result of being online. Was it ideal? Absolutely not. Was it the right thing to do in terms of maintaining the programme and delivering? Yes, it was. Was there lots of learnings in it? Absolutely. And so I think it was a really challenging but interesting time. Challenging in every way, but trying to find solutions to every kind of problem you can possibly think of on a daily basis was really quite exhausting and very isolating as well. I was very lucky to have had Kate. And we worked really well together, and Patricia, we worked really, really well together. And that was great, because you had a group of women kind of going, we just need to make this work.
Yeah.
And, been on calls late into the evening. Okay, regrouping, what happened today? Okay, what do we do? How do we respond to that? Okay, what do we need to do next? Okay, that might come up for another organisation. Can we put them in contact with them, get them having a chat about how they solved that? And, there was a lot of peer support as well.
And if COVID hadn't happened, what do you think would have become of that year?
I think the Carry Cola would have been phenomenal. I think the projects in person would have been really fantastic. I think some of the projects would have been like, wow. Really, really wow. And it's great to see some of those projects happening now, like Chelissimo with Music for Galway and others. So I think, can I tell you what would have happened in the year? No, I don't. But what would have happened would have been the footfall and the physical of the implementation of the work, which, is a huge regret that didn't happen. I think Gilgamesh would have been beautiful. But I think there are components of the work that audiences will experience for many years to come. A lot of projects morphed into different things in different deliveries in different ways. For example, Wires Crossed, which was the continual crossing over the Corrib at Galway Community Circus, that project became Lifeline, which was then delivered during Galway International Arts Festival that following year. Another example was Shunachanga, which was supposed to be on the airport during Galway 2020, was then delivered again with a little bit of restructuring and rethinking during the Arts Festival, which had also pushed out to the September, if you recall. So some of the work was delivered in different ways, means and guises. It just meant that it continued in a different way, that's all. So I think a lot of very, very good work was created. A lot of very, very good work was presented. And a lot of really interesting artists made work here and collaborated with other artists internationally online. Including Tulka and Galway Dance Project and others who did a fantastic project with Japan and did it online. So you had Japan collaborating with Tokyo, producing work presented from RSA in Ishir. It was just...
And it was how many projects altogether from the output?
In total, it was just over 1,250 events, both online and in person. I think 41 partners. And I think I'd need to look at the stats again because it's been a while. It's been 4 years. So I think 891 jobs sustained within the sector across, everyone from technicians to producers because actually moving the projects online became extremely complicated because, there was a whole other level of production required and needed.
I know.
And then to do that in a compliant way with having COVID officers on site as well, and getting access to buildings that ordinarily one wouldn't have access to, because filming was part of an essential service. So therefore, many of the projects could be produced and filmed. And some worked online, some didn't work online. It was the nature of what we had to do to deliver. So yeah, that was really so complex. I remember filming The Mighty Ocean. And actually that's one that really stays in my mind, The Mighty Ocean, because it was Máirtín O'Connor. It was supposed to be this amazing production, and filming in St. Nick's online and moving it, which was then showed on Teach Cahir, and sitting out St. Nick's, and just as I left, tears just started falling down from my face, kind of going, like, that was supposed to be an amazing piece. And yeah, it'll be an amazing piece on film and on television. But just getting emotional now, even thinking about it. You know, that and the music, it was just so emotional. Yeah. And actually, I sat outside and cried for about 2 hours, and that was the first time really I just let it all out.
Because there's no one in there. There's no one in the church. It's just the film crew and you.
Yeah, and the music residency, and Maeve and others, and Siobhan, who were producing it, and all standing apart, not really been able to talk together because we had to socially distance and do it in a compliant way, and we were all wearing masks. It was really hard. It was really hard, and just sort of being outside on Shop Street, and there was nobody in town. There's just nobody there, and just it was I think the absence of people, just that eeriness across the city was really quite phenomenal. So yeah, there are, look, it wasn't easy. And I think it would have been a great year. I think Galway deserved it. Galway worked hard for it, but also great things have come from it. And I think great things will continue to come from it. And what other town do you know in Europe or anywhere in the world that, everywhere shut down and we didn't? Kind of group of creatives, a group of people who decided this still needs to happen, and we're going to do it, and we're going to figure it out. We're going to work together to get this over the line. And I think that was very special.
I mean, you carried on in the sense that you continue working now in the public sector. And I think the formation of Galway Culture Company is so significant. Speaking on a personal level, when Galway won, City of Culture 2020, I was delighted. Part of me was thinking, at the same time, for me personally, Limerick is a very cultural city, and Cork have so much going on for them as well. And I know we have some amazing organisations, and we could be 20 minutes even just naming them here in Galway, between the arts and theatre and film and so on. But I think it's great that there's an organisation there now to support that cultural element of Galway, because it organically grew in the city, I think, around the 90s. Yeah. Especially, I suppose, when Michael D was Minister of the Arts and so on. But it's great now that there's actually a structured organisation doing it. And, as you were saying, you're doing open calls for artists out there now to support them with different initiatives, but you're doing it at a way that's, easy for them to access and to get the support and the advice and so on. Can you talk to me really about the mission of what Galway Culture Company is trying to achieve, and what's the longevity of it?
So it's a 2-year programme. It concludes in so it was September 22 to September 2024, and really it was about.
Sorry, because you're going to tell us in a second what it's achieving and hopes to achieve. Yeah, and I'm in business. I initially got into business over 20 years ago, and I know personally that to achieve a lot of things in 2 years is a very small window.
Tiny.
So why only 2 years?
That was the parameters of the funding, actually. We put in place a time frame, and it's to do with funding. I mean, that's the reality, and to look at a framework that would respond to the legacy in terms of learnings and outcomes, and to do that in a very structured way. So 3 very simple core objectives. One is European funding, European networks and supports. One is place-based, so very relevant to Galway, and the other is supports to the sector, so training, development, volunteering and so on. So just taking a very structured but simplified approach to program, because it's a 2-year program that responds to legacy. That's what it is. And most ECOCs have a legacy program that only lasts a year or two, and then they decide where they go and what they do with it. And that's the phase that we're in as well. It's no different to any other location. Some decide on a much longer time or a shorter time, or they take it in a phased approach. And I think that the phased approach is what will work for Galway. So this is one phase, and then depending on the outcome of this, to look at the next and the next. And it's about being responsive.
And is that the intention, to see what can be done next, rather than, okay, we allocated funding for 2 years, that's it now?
Yeah, it's to look at it in a phased approach, and what's relevant and right for the context in Galway, because Galway is a really interesting place in terms of culture and creativity.
And this come from a Mayo woman now, so...
True. It is a very interesting place in terms of culture and creativity. It really is. And it's about being responsive to that, and then looking at how we plan together for that. So the board of the Culture Company is very interesting, because it's all of the agencies. So all of the agencies who have a role in relation to culture and creativity, but who've never actually sat around a table to discuss, well, what together can we do, and how can we respond to the needs of the different elements of the sector that we have responsibility for. So it's starting conversations that I think are really interesting. And it's also bringing people together who ordinarily wouldn't have come together. And I think that's the key to everything for me, because legacy is about people and their participation.
And I think if you have 4 or 5 organisations saying, look, we need a concert hall or whatever, it makes the argument more plausible.
Absolutely. And as you know, we did 2 feasibilities under Shared Island for infrastructure as well. So virtual production studios and artist workspaces, and you were part of both of those. And that was an important journey to even just get that body of work done as well. So, and to bring so many different voices into the process as well. So I think... And
even with the Shared Island thing, it's this thing of not just focusing on Galway, it's reaching out across the island of Ireland, and also then reaching across into Europe.
Absolutely.
But it's connecting everyone together so that we're all working and partnering together, which is a much stronger position to be in, especially in terms of, you know, investment coming from abroad into the country. And it's also getting rid of, you know, there could be issues with, well, that's what they're like or whatever. And even working with people up in Northern Ireland, it's bridging both communities, which is brilliant.
It was great, because with Derry, we had built a relationship with them because they were UK Capital of Culture 10 years ago, and we had lovely relationships, but then nowhere to put them. And we had built a relationship with Armagh, Bainbridge, Craigavon, because they too were bidding for UK Capital of Culture, which, as you know, didn't materialise because of Brexit. So we had built all these incredible relationships, and Shared Island afforded us the opportunity to reconnect and rethink and rebuild, and then to put the feasibility studies in place with Galway City Council, and to bring a lot of different voices into both of those bodies of research, very relevant. I mean, there was over, I think, 100 organisations, entities and agencies involved in all of that. So it was a really interesting piece of work, which has resulted in 2 very good feasibility studies, which now sit with the department for consideration and to understand what the next steps might be. And the 2 universities played a huge role in that as well. They were brilliant to work with. And Teach Cahir and Galway Arts Centre and many, many others, too many to name, and Crew. So it was really about just bringing people together, sitting around the table going, okay, we're all responsible. How can we make a contribution to this? And this is an opportunity. And to really refocus. So that was really important. And
just for someone who has no involvement or interest in this, like how do you think this would benefit Joe Blogg sitting at home listening to this podcast? Well, it's funny because, you know, Joe Bloggs might attend a Machnas parade, and Joe Bloggs may not realise that some of the work he's looking at was created during the European Capital of Culture year, because so much work was created that the public actually will experience it for years to come, but won't necessarily make the connection. And actually, nor too should they, you know, that's part of the job too. Or they might see a film shot on location here and not realise that actually that came from this. Yeah. Or the work that we've done in relation to European connections, where we've worked with over 190 organisations across Europe to better connect organisations in Galway. And they might experience something here
that has resulted in that, whether it's a piece of work, whether it's a piece of infrastructure, whether it's a piece of development, and all of these things are interconnected. And we're not necessarily going to shout about them from the rooftops. I'm a great believer in letting some of this just happen organically too.
Yeah.
And letting the work speak for itself and letting the connections do what they do best. One of my greatest joys in life is facilitating those connections and putting the right people in contact with the right people and just stepping back and just letting the magic happen.
And you're really good at that. Like you love to you're like the matchmaker. You love to kind of connect people and say, I think the two of you will flourish together and do well, business-wise now, not relationship. but they are ultimately building relationships, isn't it? Completely.
And it's been really interesting actually to bring people together and kind of go, you would work really well with you do this, you do that, as organizations, you have responsibility for this, this and this. And did you know that and that, those kind of things. And that's been highly rewarding actually.
Yeah, like I was over at the Berlin Film Festival there in February, and there's a huge hunger from various European producers to work with Irish producers. And again, it's just kind of setting things up so it's a seamless transition for everyone doing it. And that meeting you have at Berlinale, it might be 3-4 years before the project kicks off, but it's just building that trust in the relationship.
It does take time, and we're almost there now with, a large number of organisations, and there are many organisations who have the resources to do it for themselves, absolutely, and they're doing it. But there are those who don't and are very fearful of big European funding, in the same way that we spoke about artists having a fear of filling out an application form, and that's a very general comment, by the way. It's the same for many cultural organisations, just being fearful of European funding, but actually developing the partners, developing the skills, and then demystifying it all and kind of going, actually, it's not that bad. And going and seeing, like ourselves and Machnus went to the opening of Capital of Culture in Estonia, and, they were saying, wow, okay, actually, we can totally do this. So that, that's capacity building.
I remember meeting you at a basketball match, and I'm so jealous you got to go to Estonia. You must have had a great time. You're like, Garry, I was there like one night.
36 hours. It is not glamorous getting the go bus at 2:00 in the morning. I live on CityLink, and again, it's just, been away from home, and time away from home is work. And for me, I take public transport. So, I leave at 2 a.m. I might be there for a day, and I'll leave at midnight, travel through the night, and then get home just as the kids are going to school.
Yeah, but like the hobby's always on the go as well. Like, I mean, I could only imagine you'd want to be a good organizer in your household.
It's completely chaotic. I would love to lie and say that it is highly organised. It's not. It's like any other house. We're organised insofar as we possibly can be, but we both have busy jobs, and the kids are great, and sometimes we don't, we don't get it all right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's beans and toast for dinner or cornflakes because I'm late in the door or somebody else is late in the door.
Yeah. No, fair play, like, because like we bump into each other every so often, school runs or at basketball matches that our girls are involved in, but it's, you're always on the go like this.
Oh yeah, like my kids they get into the car going, who are you doing a call with now? Because I'm constantly on calls. Look, like anybody else, you just get it all done, don't you? It is what it is. We have to rear the children and work and also feed them and the dog.
There's something lovely that you did during COVID, which I think, people would find really interesting, and maybe have a think about where they could maybe lend some support to artists out there as well. And that was the whole thing of commissioning art during COVID.
Yeah. I started collecting art when I was 19. And I suppose as a family, we've built up, a good collection, I suppose. And during COVID, it was actually, I have to say, credit where credit's due, was Barry's idea. Because I was working from home and feeling the burden of all of that enormously, hugely. And been just very concerned about a lot of artists that we knew down through the years, and just being concerned and worried. And Barry said, well, why don't we look at maybe buying more art during COVID than ordinarily we would. So we did. And then we went to John Behan at one point and just decided, because we've a few of John's pieces, love John Behan's work. I mean, he's just one of Ireland's incredible people, never mind artists. He's just a beautiful human being on every level. And we ended up doing a commission with each of our girls with John. So they each created a sculpture each with John, which was a lovely thing.
Yeah.
And then just coming home and kind of going, Barry was photographing the bay, and we had hoped to do a renovation on our house, which of course we couldn't do. And he took photographs over 20 days. And then we worked with Karina Early, painter, to paint from the photographs, because again, it was during COVID, so everything was online and And then we discovered another incredible artist who lived locally, Donncha Quilty. And we did, a piece with Donncha, just bought another piece of Donncha's. I tend to go back. So we've a lot of John Behan's, a lot of Dolores Line.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was part of a swim group. Swim is a total exaggeration. The name of the WhatsApp group is the Floaters and Chatters, and I think that just tells you everything. Like half the country starts back swimming in the sea during COVID and trying to socially distance and connect and do everything right. And I asked Gala to do just a sketch of the girls. Again, it was all done online, and then had a print done for each of the girls in the group, just to acknowledge that time, that time. And then we did photography with Cormac McMahon. So we did a lot of commissions with artists as a family that we did together.
It's so unique a piece to have then, isn't it?
Well, I can tell you where every piece in the house, I can tell you where we bought it, from whom. There's a story for every single piece. And I think that's the thing about art, that it evokes something in you and for us as a family. And I was really proud of my kids and Barry, because, they really, it was Barry's idea, it wasn't mine. And it became a thing that we did as a family, to buy more art during COVID, to commission new work during COVID as a family, and to invest and to support. And that was just something that we decided to do. And it's a nice thing. It was a very meaningful thing for us as a family to do. And, my kids have, they used their communion money to buy art. Izzy went to Geraldine O'Rourke's gallery in Spiddle when she did her first Holy Communion, and said, "I want to buy a piece of your art for my collection." Brilliant. And Geraldine said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, this is my communion money." I could see the tears coming in at that stage. So I was like, oh my God. And she said, "The best way to support artists is not to go to openings and drink wine. It's actually to buy art. Do you know that?" So I was like, oh God. I tend not to go to a lot of opening nights.
I wouldn't blame you.
For me, I just love going back quietly in my own time and just taking in the work. And
but it's the amount of chaffode you have to listen to from people who are half steamed, trying to remain static, upright.
I think when you come from a background where your job is funding, there's never an off minute.
No.
I sometimes I just want to go and see the work and talk to the artist. If I don't know them, and if I do know them, to go and support them and just be there and take the work in. I love that. That is one of my greatest joys, because during COVID, the arts were something that we all engaged with every single day, whether we know it or not. And actually, audience figures are way down since COVID. Way down, down by 23% in some cases, and
50%, I think, in cinemas.
Yes. It's also less cinema because of the strikes of So like, I go to cinema a lot. I have three friends that we go to cinema a lot and enjoy and love, and it's time out, and it's just, okay, this is amazing. Sometimes I go back, I've seen in Colleen Coon, I don't know how many times. There's something that resonates. Then I love film, absolutely love. It's one of my favourite things. And I will go and see pretty much anything. And with kids as well, they expose you to a whole other level of cinema that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily be exposed to. And some of it's like, oh my God, can I fall asleep here? No.
And it's always the best movie ever once they've just seen it.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. And then the next one, I have to go to the next one. And the kids love cinema.
Yeah, it's just great.
Which is great, and what they've come to understand is what's involved in it. And I think that's really important as well, that they know how much work goes into it, because it's not easy.
Well, like, I got into filmmaking because I got excited about it in the mid-'80s because The Quiet Man was made in the west of Ireland in the 1950s.
Yeah.
And then I remember when The Field was being shot in Lenan, and Dad brought me out to Lenan where all the caravans were there in the middle of the town.
Wow.
And I saw all the stars on the caravans and I was like, oh my God, this is so reaching distance. Like I can be part of it. But they were only like a couple of things that had happened in a 30-year period, whereas now it's amazing. And it brings us into UNESCO. So Galway is a UNESCO city of film, which is great to get that recognition. But I suppose what needs to be done now is that we drive it home that we actually fulfill that title.
Yeah, and Ardán are doing incredible work in relation to UNESCO because, again, when Galway was designated a UNESCO City of Film, it was 2014. And I think at the time there were only 7 cities who were designated film. So Creative Cities is a network. There's different elements within that. So gastronomy, media, film, visual arts, creative media, literature and so on, music. So each country can only host one designation each. So Galway will only ever be the only city in Ireland who hosts that designation of Galway as UNESCO City of Film.
And how do you get to be
Dublin is
designated as a city of film? Like
you apply.
But what you have to prove then?
So with the UNESCO City of Film, the AV Forum came back together. It was led by Lelia Doolan at the time, who decided Galway was going to be a UNESCO City of Film.
She's turning, is it 93?
90.
90, is
she's jumping out of an airplane.
Unbelievable.
She's incredible.
I've known her 25 years. She hasn't aged at all. It's mad.
And Declan Gibbons in the Galway Film Resource Centre at the time came to me and said, what do you think of this? And I was like, wow, that's phenomenal. We should absolutely do this. And I think because we'd come on the back of doing so much work in film development in terms of support, it made sense for Galway. And also the work that Údarás an Gaeltacht, the Teach Cahar, the Film Resource Centre, there was a lot of production happening in Galway at the time. It made sense that we would apply for this together. And James Harold, there was an incredible bunch of people involved.
And the FLA as well.
And Miriam Allen and the FLA. Miriam was really pioneering in relation to the UNESCO City of Film. She was really, really amazing. And everybody worked quite hard to pull all of the information, the data. It was a huge learning curve for everybody involved because there was a large group and then there was a subgroup and then there was like 5 of us who were just concentrating on let's get this and this together. But there was a lot of data compiled during that time. And that was an eye-opener for everyone within the wider circle in terms of, wow, X number of productions per annum, value of productions, number of jobs being created. And there were some very key statistics that emerged from it. And the opportunity to then be part of a global network where you can look at, okay, you're doing this in Potsdam, you're doing that in Bradford. And actually, one of the key things that emerged at Screen Yorkshire with Bradford as a city of film had a regional fund, and Galway really needed to look at this. And one of the connection points in the UNESCO City of Film programme in terms of the potential is to look at what works in other cities. How could that be replicated here? And what Alan and Gar and the team in UNESCO City of Film office, which is in Ardán, are looking at now is, well, how can we make those connections work?
Yeah, and look, we love everyone in Ireland, but for so long, the East was getting all the business, with the studios out there. So it's important that on the West...
Yeah, but Section 481 is Section 481, the thing is, we still are regionally disadvantaged. Like, let's call a spade here. And we are regionally disadvantaged on a number of different levels. And if I had any ambition for the sector for the future, it would be that we have more of a regional balance in terms of funding, prioritisation of funding for the region, and actually access to infrastructure development support and European funding as a region. And we're a region transition, a region lagging, which is not good in terms of European statistics, which means we're way behind, way behind. So if I had any ambition for our sector, is that the creative sector, the cultural sector would be leading on that from here. And we have the opportunity to do that.
Brilliant. And I suppose, if a big production came to the West, like Game of Thrones came to Northern Ireland, it quickly change everything and things will start moving even much faster. But you got to have a good foundation in place to even allow that to happen.
And also you need to support local, smaller production companies here to produce here. That's fundamental to the ecosystem, actually. So agency support, Section 481, infrastructure, development, but and yes, attract large scale production in, but also assist in producing out, so that we actually, the smaller production companies are better supported here within the region. And I think that is also key to the success too, because, you know, it's great having large scale production coming in, but then they're gone. We need to, and we really need to sustain what's here. And there's a lot here. There's a lot of people working in the East because they're following the work, you know. So, you know, I think we need to do both. I think we need to do both immediately, and we need to do both really well, because the talent is here.
What would you say to someone who is maybe looking at getting involved in film and TV, or, you know, they'd love to become an artist? You know, realistically, you're on the ground, you know what's available now, what will realistically be coming down the line. You know, even if it was one of your own that was looking to get into the creative arts, what would you say to them?
Oh, it's really funny you asked that, because I have 3 nieces, and so I'm the eldest child. So my nieces and my first cousins are the same age. It's a really funny situation to be in, because there's 20 years between my dad and his youngest sister. So I have nieces and first cousins in college right now, 6 of them I think in total, 2 doing film and animation. My niece Shauna is doing music in Cork, 2 doing visual art. So and my eldest wants to be a creative director.
Okay, cool.
And my youngest wants to be an artist. So it's a conversation I have a lot. So I think it's a tough sector to make a living in. It's a tough sector to work in, but I know that it comes from within, and there's nothing you can do to fight that. So what you need to do is to understand what the supports are around it, and figure out a way to build a crew around you, actually, your own ecosystem to help support yourself, because that's what you need to do. You need to be self-employed and resilient and very focused on what you want to achieve yourself, and to try and maintain your own creative practice from yourself and staying true to your work and yourself, but understanding that not everything's going to work out, and also understanding where it might land and what the levels of supports are, but also being wise enough to know when you need to get assistance and support and where to go for that. What is difficult for young people starting out is the canvas, because it's so blank, and at the same time it's so big. It's a bit like, oh, where do I go to get information on bursaries? Where do I go to get information on tax? Like we ran a seminar last year for visual artists, and we covered tax and social media and all sorts of things that people ordinarily wouldn't have necessarily thought about, and they were the most attended. We're running a program with Crew in a couple of months' time, and one of the things that we're looking at is, you know, how you actually manage yourself as a practitioner, in terms of IP, tax, rights. So that there's all of these things. So the canvas is so big and broad. It's a little bit like I'd love to streamline some of that. I think the Arts Council did a phenomenal job during COVID. They've maintained some of their practices in terms of getting information out there quickly. And at the start of the year, all the deadlines are released. And that's a great, and the Agility Award as well, which is very flexible in terms of what you can apply for. But then when you kind of go broader, Screen Ireland, Design and Craft Council, there's a different council for different areas of culture. So Heritage Council, Arts Council, Screen Ireland, Design and Craft Council. In most European countries, that's held in 1 or maybe 2. So
like the Ministry of Culture or something.
So it's a very different way of working in Ireland. And then local arts offices will focus on arts, but not necessarily broader culture. And the local enterprise office will focus on enterprise. So it's about business. And actually, as a practitioner, you fall into all of those categories and boxes. So I think the funding system could be better aligned to creative practice rather than focusing on just art, film, and categorizing, because that's not how we make work anymore. That's not how we develop as creative practitioners anymore. It's a very different place. It's a very different place. And even in the last 10 years, it's changed. And I think the funding systems need to evolve to reflect that and to better support that and to support the next generation and the existing generation.
Yeah, true.
You know, to do that better and to make information easier to understand. Simple language, please.
Yeah, brilliant.
You know, so that's what I would, you know, and also the other thing is to work with the universities on when you graduate, what to expect. I'd love to see some very practical sessions on when you graduate. And I used to do it as an arts officer. We'd go in on a Thursday with the final year graduates at lunchtime because it was non-accredited, and we'd talk about bursaries, funding, public art, all the opportunities that existed. So more of that, please, so that when graduates come out, at least they know where to start on the canvas. Yeah,
like when I come out of film and TV, set up a production company with 2 other lads, thought we knew it all.
Yeah.
Our ecosystem was just us. We didn't, which was the first mistake, we didn't broaden and get a better support structure. But we didn't know how to run a business. We didn't know how to really properly do application forms. And it's through trial and error that you finally figure it out. But obviously the education system is one thing, is to try and get you through that system and that you know how to do something. But then it's how do you apply that in the real world, and just having, you know, the real skills that are needed.
Yeah.
That's not just putting in an application, but how do you build relationships? Where do you find the relationships to grow? What to look for? And that it's not... You know, again, I think there's certain things in today's culture for the younger generation where they feel that it's all about making money fast.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really exist in the arts.
No. No.
To make money, that's the achievement. You know, to make a living, that's
yeah.
That's the gold.
To make a living and to enjoy that living and to be afforded the opportunity to have the choice to do it. You know, we're lucky to live where we live with everything that's going on in the world. So just to be able to have the choice to decide, this is the career path that I want, and these are the structures that are there to support me in that, and also be enough of a go-getter to go and find where they are. They won't come to you.
No.
You do need to go to them.
There's no one waiting for you outside of college to hold your hand.
No. So the advice I give my nieces and my cousins, we had my mother's 70th birthday recently and they were all there. So all the art gang were in one corner and the rest of the family were looking over going, oh, that gang are over there, you know. And we ended up having this big conversation because I'm the only one who's in administration. Well,
the thing is, I've learned it, and I have friends in business as well that are not involved in the arts. And if it's something that really fulfills you, forget about the financial side of it. I think you'll figure that out to just that you'll get by fine. But if it really fulfills you, you have to do it, because you will have regrets for the rest of your life if you ignore your passion to get the safe job, the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job that'll guarantee you an income for the next 40 years.
Yeah. And I think if you have that creative inkling, you can't ignore it. It just eats you until it bursts out in a different way. And that's part of the discussion I was having with family members as well. One cousin went back to college in his 30s to do visual art because that's what he wanted to do. That's what he didn't do. Regretted it and then left and just went back. And he is the happiest guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no other way to describe it, really, is there? I don't know.
Finally, as we finish up, who's your favourite artist?
Why did you ask me that? We ran out of the town. Actually, we ran out of the town.
Well, they could be dead now, so you could kind of cover yourself that way.
I don't have one. I am. Is she? I am an absolute, so not an artist as such, but I'm an absolute Lady Gregory not nerd and nut. I have every book on Lady Gregory going. When Druid did Lady Gregory, I thought I was going to pass out. Can I answer that? Jeez, I don't know. Some of the artists that we worked with during COVID are famous artists as a family in terms of the work and the human and the person and everything. Karina Early, John Behan, Dolores Lyne, Gala, who did a lot of work for us, Donnacha Quilty, who have come to really love his work so much, and he's in Furbo right across the road, just really inspiring. And Margaret Irwin West is an artist who had a very significant birthday as well recently. They're some of the artists that I personally love. And it's really interesting because I used to buy art for the county art collection.
Oh, cool.
Myself and James used to buy for the city art collection. And it's really funny. When you buy art for a collection and you buy art for a home, they're two totally different things.
Yeah.
I think there's only 3 artists in total that I have in my home, at home, in our own collection, that I would have bought as part of the municipal collection, if you know what I mean. It's a very different thing. It's a totally different thing. I don't know if I could answer that in one.
Yeah.
John Behan. Okay, I'll say it. John Behan, I think, yeah.
And what's the connection? What draws you into Lady Gregory?
Oh, James and I joked about this before when I was reading Lady Gregory's Toothbrush, the Turbine book, and we were out. I think she was probably Ireland's first arts officer, Ireland's first administrator. She understood artists in a way and nurtured and developed and supported and created, and wasn't afraid to do the right thing despite how difficult it was. She wrote, she researched, she developed, she built. And sometimes her work was hidden by others who took credit for her writings, her works, and so on. And she let it happen because she believed in the work. She really believed in the work. And there's something about cool. There's something about Gregory. There's something about her brilliance. I am completely drawn to that woman. And when Phoebine did a piece of hers, total reinterpretation of the folklore that she collected, I remember talking to Dark, and people were really up and down about that. And I kind of said, well, I think she probably would have spun in her grave, actually, but she would have, from what I've read of her, enjoyed the fact that you were interpreting it and turning it on its head and rethinking it and redoing it, because she was innovative and she was ahead of her time. And she wasn't afraid to give voice to other men, a lot of other men. She wasn't afraid to give voice to them in and of herself at a time when women didn't do that. And she was also just a generous human. She used to bring apples down to the schoolhouse and feed the local kids. She was just a generous person on every level. So I'm deeply inspired by Gregory, deeply inspired.
I can see that, and I can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, she is influencing you as well.
She has, yeah. And, every time I find a new piece on her, about her, of her, that you learn something new. And all these years later, she's a very inspirational character. The Lady Gregory Autumn Gathering used to be one of my favourite events to go to as an arts officer in Cool. And that's, the late great Sheila O'Donnell and Lois Tobin and Ronnie O'Gorman, and these people who, her work just inspired.
Kept it alive.
And kept it alive and worked really hard. That period for me as an arts officer. And even like recently, Galway Rural Development shared a post on Facebook about the Baffle Arts Society, the Baffle Literature Society in Loughrea. The Baffle Literature Festival in the east of the county was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And we forget about the rich literary heritage of Galway East.
Yeah.
And the writers who lived in the east of the county and did all of this incredible work and helped put Irish literature on the map. And it was done in the east of the county, and that's sometimes forgotten, so I'm a huge Lady Gregory nerd, not afraid to say it.
Well, Lady Marilyn Gaughan-Reddan, thank you for coming in and joining me today on Garry Talks.
Thanks, Garry.